by the power of grace divine. My soul looks up with a steadfast hope. Not my will, but thine be done. Give life and meaning to these words. And when all is said and done, it is to your name we shall give the praise. Amen. From the scripture that was read earlier in your hearing, I want to call your attention again to Psalms 4. And I want to lift again in your hearing verse 1. And I shall read from the New Revised Standard Version, Psalms 4, verse 1. It reads, "Answer me when I call, O God of my right. You gave me room when I was in distress. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer. Answer me when I call, O God of my right. You gave me room when I was in distress. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer." I want to talk with us for a few moments today from the subject, prayer still works. Prayer still works. The fourth Psalm, the place where our text and sermonic focus for today comes from, is considered by biblical scholars to be a lament or a supplication psalm. By this, scholars are suggesting that the writer is using a particular psalm to express deep sorrow, grief, or regret. The notion of lament is one of the several major themes in the Bible, and specifically in the book of Psalms. Lament psalms are poems or hymns that expresses the real struggles of life. In other words, when one reads or studies a lament psalm, one is hearing from a writer who is expressing the struggles, griefs, and challenges of life in real time. Lament psalms are also prayers wherein the writer is laying out a troubling situation to God and asking the Lord, and asking for the Lord's help, asking the Lord to do something about what's troubling the psalmist. I want to suggest that lament psalms, like the one we are focusing on today, Psalm 4, present the cases of writers doing what the great hymn of the church, "What a Friend We Have in Jesus," suggests we do when it says, "Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Even if we do not know the cause behind the writing of the fourth Psalm, we do know that the writer knows what to do with what's ailing him. The writer, we're told, is David. And though we do not really know what he's dealing with, In other words, we may not know what has David in the emotional space he is in, but we, by evidence of this psalm, can conclude that he knows what to do with his situation or his situation. He takes it to the Lord in prayer. This we sense right off the bat. What are the words greeting us as we read the fourth psalm? Listen to what we hear from the pen and mouth of David as he begins his lament in verse 1 of this particular psalm. He starts out with these words, answer me. David doesn't have time for any niceties with God. Answer me. You ever been there? God, I ain't got time. I ain't got time for all this other stuff. I need to get to the matter at hand. Answer me when I call. Oh God of my right, you gave me room when I was in distress. Be gracious to me and answer my prayer. As we can see and hear, David knows something about dealing with the stuff life throws at you. You take it to the Lord in prayer. Let me say it again. You take it to the Lord in prayer. David does this because he knows from firsthand experience that the God of his right is one who, as I shared in our prayer call the other night, David's God is not a one-hit wonder. Y'all didn't get that, did y'all? When y'all get to Charles or go down the aisle at Kroger's, that's what he meant. That our God is not a one-hit wonder. Ain't it that good news? No, David's God, your God, and my God is a God of repeat performances. Somebody say repeat performances. Oh, y'all don't believe that, do you? Well, let's try it this way. Our God is a do-it-again God. A do-it-again God. By his own admission, David is going back to the source of his help. He goes back to the Lord because in times of distress before, God gave him room. Cam, put that phone up. We had a conversation, so, I need him to be clear. I want to suggest that he's going back to his help because he knows from experience that the source of his help is in the prayer answering business. David asked the Lord to do as you have done for me before. Hear my prayer. When David says, you gave me room when I was in distress, and now I'm back because I need you to hear my prayer. David takes his matter and case to the Lord because he knows for himself that prayer still works. Prayer still works because God is the same God who answered before, and he's confident God will answer again. As we move beyond verse 1 to the second verse, David seems to call out some stuff with which he's dealing with. There are some people who are not doing right by him. To them he says, how long, you people? How long, you people, shall my honor suffer shame? How long will you love vain words and seek after lies? But know that the Lord has set apart the faithful for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. David's lament has to do with ungodly people doing ungodly things to him in his reputation. These people are dishonest, corrupt, and guilty of spreading lies on and about David. You know some folk like that? David wants to know how long these people will do these things that they are doing to try to damage his reputation. My beloved David's question of how long then could very well be the lead story on Fox and CNN News today. How long will they stole election lie continue to get press? How long will our elected officials continue to major in the minors and minor in the majors? When it comes to policies and laws that bring us together rather than to divide us. How long will this state and this nation, how long will it take for this nation and this state to pass sensible gun control laws, or rather how many more children, police officers, or black folk will it take to be killed before they get the memo? How long? How long will it take for those in power to realize that you cannot keep releasing career criminals on their own recognizance and not expect them to go back to what they know? How long will it take for a former president to face real justice from the justice system? How long will it take before justice truly becomes colorblind? When I look at David's question to the people he was speaking to, I love what he told them. He told them, keep on doing what you're doing. Keep on saying what you're saying. It may cause me distress, but you cannot and you will not have the last word. I know you won't, because I got a secret weapon. It's called prayer. It works. Because God assured me and the righteous that he has our backs. David said to them, but I know that the Lord has set apart the faithful for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. David said, say what y'all want to say. Do what you want to say. Lie as much as you want to lie. Tarnish my reputation, damage my reputation, but I'm righteous. I've been set apart. David is boasting in what he has to deal with and respond to the stuff the folk are trying to do to his name and reputation. David then moves from talking to them and telling them they can't take him out. The words, lies, and accusation of the people cannot take him to a place where they win. No, instead of fighting with them or trying to get even, David got a better strategy. In verse 5, he tells them, said, when you are disturbed. One translation says, it says, be angry. Here it says, when you are disturbed, do not sin. Ponder it on your beds and be silent. Offer right sacrifices and put your trust in the Lord. What he's telling them is, I will get angry, but I will not let your anger cause me to sin. Rather than sin, I'll just ponder these things. And I'll ponder these things. I'll ponder that I got more going for me than I got going against me. David chooses to do the right thing by offering sacrifices unto the Lord. He puts his trust in the Lord. In other words, David has the right idea. He fights on his knees rather than fight with weapons against those who are determined to destroy him. David wants to know how can he see some good. He asked the Lord to handle the matter. We too live in a day and age where we desire to see some good. Day in and day out, we see and hear so much bad news. Turn the news on at 5 o'clock. Now at 4 o'clock or whatever time you turn it on, they never start out with any good news. Even breaking news is bad news. Day in and day out, we see and hear so much bad news. We see bad news. We see bad in a young police officer killed by a teenager in a gun battle. We see bad when a former president sees his self-inflicted situation to that of President Nelson Mandela. We see bad when children can get their hands on guns easier than they can get a chance at a college education. We see bad when the Supreme Court spends its days and nights undoing the victories of the civil rights movement. We see bad when a hard-working mama and a father work hours on the end, and still they got to spend the night in their cars or with willing relatives or friends, or they got to live in some unsafe hotel. My sisters and brothers, we too, like David, want to see some good. Yes, we too, like David, on the second Sunday after the good news of Easter, are crying to the Lord in the words of David, "Let the light of your countenance shine on us, O Lord. You put gladness in my heart more than when their grain and wine abandoned." They might be up today, but there's a down day coming for them. As our writer nears the end of this prayer, we are not told whether or not God answered his prayer. We are not told. We are told of David's confidence in the fact that he knows that God may not come when you want him, but God will come. David, by his words, bear witness to his confidence and assurance as he shares in his closing words in this psalm. He closes by saying, "I will lie down and sleep in peace." I got a whole lot of stuff going on, but I'm going to lie down and I'm going to sleep in peace. For you alone, O Lord, make me lie down in safety. My sisters and brothers, what an assurance David exhibits. And David exhibits in these words. His words and actions remind me of the words of the first hymn we were taught when we started the youth choir in my home church, Bailey Tabernacle in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. The chorus of the hymn, "Leave It There." You know it. It says, "Take your burdens to the Lord and leave them there. Say, if you trust and never doubt, he will surely bring you out." The movements in the psalm seem to suggest David has taken his burdens to the Lord, and he's left them there. You know how to be dealing with some stuff and have some serious situations, and you can go to sleep at night? That's because you've taken your burdens to the Lord, and you left them there. Because of what the Lord and the Lord alone has done and is doing and will do, David can sleep at night. My brothers and sisters, that's worth the price of admission. As I near my seat, I hope you've been able to see the notion of prayer still works in the life and witness of our writer David. Therefore, in closing, let me quickly suggest three things this psalm invites us to do in response to the notion that prayer still works. First of all, prayer still works invites us to practice it. Somebody said practice it. In other words, prayer does not need to be proven. It needs to be practiced. David can invite us to practice prayer because in addition to being a man after God's own heart, the Bible suggests to us by Psalm 4 that David was also a praying man. Prayer still works because it invites us to practice it in our daily lives, even in the best times and the worst of times. Secondly, prayer still works. Invites us to pour it all out to the Lord. My friends, we see from the beginning to the end that David does not shy away from pouring out his heart to God. We see it as he sets his adversaries straight. He calls on God because of what the people doing to him and causing him distress and creating for him an uncalled for situation. This is what you and I can do. We can have the assurance that prayer still works. And as the hymn says, we can lay our all on the altar of sacrifice. Third and finally, prayer still works. Calls for us to put a praise on it. My dear friends, it may not seem clear to you, but I want to suggest the idea of putting a praise on it is running throughout the fourth Psalm. Just to cite from my window a couple of examples. For instance, David's ability not to be angry and allow his anger to cause him to sin is because he put a praise on it. He chooses to praise the Lord instead of allowing his adversaries to take him to a place of no return. David moving beyond the drum of people is because his willingness to put a praise on it. His ability to put a praise on it is what we should do when we know that prayer still works. We put a praise on it. When we call on God in the midst of waiting and just waiting to see what God will do. Just waiting is putting a praise on it. I'm a witness. I'm a witness that prayer still works. It's worked down through the years, and it's still working. I know prayer still works. And in the words of football coach Deion Sanders, I got the receipts. Anybody got some receipts? Anybody know that prayer still works? Anybody got receipts that prayer still works? Some of you may remember the gospel song of a few years back entitled, "The Blood Still Works." Well, I want to do a Marvin Frank Thomas Sr. remix. I've come by 1096 Thomas Street to tell you prayer still works. Prayer still works. I know it works because it raised me. I know it works because it healed me. I know it works because it filled me. I know it works because I know it works. Because I know it works. Prayer still works. Therefore, as I take my seat, I'll leave these words made famous by the late Mahalia Jackson as a testimony. I found the answer. I learned to pray. With faith to guide me, I found my way. The sun is shining for me. Not every other day. Every day. The answer, and I learned to pray. With faith to guide me, I found my way. The sun is shining for me each day. I found the answer. I learned to pray. Sister Balls comes to bless us in this hymn. The doors of the church are open. Maybe somebody needs to know the one who's in the business of answering prayers. And also as she sings, we intentionally designed our service today to remind us that prayer still works. And as you are moved, you may come to the altar during her singing. The doors of the church open. Let's all stand and the altar is open.